was passing by my son-in-law's house and decided to stop by. I saw my husband's car at the gate. What is he doing here? I walked up to the window. What I heard, I couldn't believe my ears. Before I tell you how I dismantled the prettiest little betrayal Atlanta ever bred, pause this video, hit subscribe, and type the city you're watching from. I wasn't supposed to be on Auburn Avenue that Tuesday morning. The plan was simple. Pick up a box of lemon lavender scones from Mama Joyce's, drop them at the church bazaar, and drive home to finish my crossword before Judge Judy. But traffic on I-20 snarled like garden hose, so I veered south, cut through the old 4th Ward, and rolled past Jessica's brick walk-up just as the heavens chose to pour. Fate likes drama, I obliged. Jessica's black Suburban sat in the driveway, usual. Behind it, tucked like a secret, rested Victor's pearl gray Jaguar, engine still ticking. My husband was working a client breakfast clear across town, or so he claimed when he kissed my cheek at 7. Curious, I parked half a block down, umbrella useless against sideways rain, and hurried toward the side gate. The kitchen blinds were half drawn. Light spilled across marble like stage lamps. Victor's baritone floated through the window, low and slick. File the petition next Thursday. The sooner she signs incompetency, the faster we liquidate the Midtown condo. I'll take the pension rollover. You slide the trust into your LLC. Clean. My breath hitched. Another voice, Jason, my son-in-law, answered. And we blame psychological coercion. Controlling spouse. The court eats that up with seniors. Exactly, Victor said, ice clinking. She won't fight. Gloria's tired. Tired? The word cracked bone. 32 years I'd worn drywall dust like perfume, built Wilson and Hartman construction from a pickup truck and a toolbox, endured bankers who called me Miss Gloria like I was their maid. I'd wrestled racism, sexism, recession, and a partial roof collapse that nearly broke my back. Tired wasn't in my blood, but betrayal. That was a new element, hot and metallic. Rain softened footfalls as I backed away, phone trembling. Camera app open, I hit record through the sliver in the blinds. Their plot spilled easy as red paint. Secret transfers, falsified evaluations, a judge golfed with, a granddaughter promised tuition once grandma loosens her grip. I should have cried. Instead, a clean, cold focus settled over me, the same calm I felt the night a subcontractor mismeasured a load-bearing beam and we had 40 minutes to shore up a half-built roof before it pancaked. You don't scream, you calculate. Back in my Buick, I called the one person who'd never failed me, Harold Big Hale Turner, my original accountant. Hale answered on half a ring. I told him to meet me at the office with a forensic team and 2 pots of community coffee. Bring your quiet shoes, I said. We're hunting ghosts in the ledger. By noon, we occupied the conference room of my semi-retired firm, desk surfaces still gleaming, though I no longer clocked daily hours. Hale's people combed through bank portals, trust documents, even Victor's phantom shell company, Vic J Holdings LLC, registered to a P.O. box in Decatur. Every click unearthed fresh rot. Quarterly consulting fees siphoned from our rental portfolio, withdrawals just under the IRS reporting threshold, a pending life insurance change listing Jessica as sole beneficiary. I printed every screen, logged timestamps, stapled witness statements. At 3 p.m., I phoned Clarice Mason, attorney, Spellman's sister, and the sharpest estate litigator in Fulton County. Clarice listened, lips pursed, then asked only one question. You ready for war, Glow? I answered, I was born during one. We drafted cease and desist letters, slapped restraining orders on joint accounts, and flagged Victor's Jaguar lease as marital property. Clarice scheduled an emergency hearing for Friday. Grounds: attempted financial abuse of an elderly spouse. Elderly. The label tasted sour, but if the law wished to armor me with senior citizen statutes, I'd wear them like Kevlar. Sundown found me alone in the midtown condo Victor now salivated over. Hardwood floors echoed as though sensing upheaval. I poured peppermint tea, forced 3 calming breaths, and dialed Jessica. Voicemail. I tried again. Finally, she answered. Harried, Mom, I'm busy. I said only, I know, and hung up. Let her wonder which truth I'd uncovered. That night I slept on Derek Hartman Temper foam and dreamt of cranes swinging steel beams, each beam stamped with a name. Trust, dignity, home. Wind howled, bolts loosened, but I stood beneath, hammer ready, tightening every damn nut before sunrise. Friday morning, the courthouse buzzed with stale coffee and fresh gossip. Victor arrived immaculately pressed, Jason at his flank like a junior associate. Surprise flickered when they saw me flanked by Clarice and Hale, box of evidence in tow. The hearing was swift. Frozen accounts, injunction on asset transfers, psychological evaluation tossed for lack of clinical basis. Victor's jaw flexed. Jason paled. Walking out, Clarice whispered, "Opening salvo landed." I nodded, heart drumming with battle bass. Dough rising. I didn't win everything that first week. Wars are scaffolds built slowly, but I'd secured the foundation. Time. Time to expose shell games, to trace every penny, to remind my family I wasn't furniture to be moved, but the architect of the very roof over their plotting heads. Clarice says every battle is won twice. First in quiet rooms where evidence stitches itself into a story, then in the courtroom where that story blindsides the enemy. My quiet room became the condo's guest bedroom. Friday night, I spread printouts across the bedspread, bank statements, lease agreements, email headers. Hale's team recovered from Victor's deleted folder. One column nagged me. Fuel charges on Jason's business card logged at odd hours, 2:17 a.m., 4:05 a.m., always near Peachtree Industrial Boulevard. My gut, a compass honed by decades of job site surprises, pointed there. I still own a flip phone, no apps, just 10 digits and stubborn reliability. But my granddaughter Macy once gifted me a slim GPS tracker for senior safety. I'd never used it. Saturday at dawn, I slipped the device beneath the Jaguar's passenger seat while the men inside Jessica's house slept off their arrogance. The unit pinged coordinates to Hale's secure portal every 5 minutes. By Sunday midnight, the pattern was undeniable. Victor's Jag left Jessica's driveway twice weekly around 2 a.m., idled 15 minutes behind a strip of industrial warehouses, then returned. Hale cross-referenced property records. Jason leased Unit 12B at that same address under Vic J. Holdings. We pulled satellite imagery, a storage bay wide enough for a forklift. Monday morning, Clarice filed a subpoena for security footage. While bureaucracy inched forward, I paid a visit to 12B wearing my old steel-toed boots and a high-vis vest, call it occupational camouflage. The roll-up door stood open. Inside, pallets of construction materials lined the walls. Copper pipe, hardwood planks, boxes of imported fixtures. All inventory numbers matched Wilson and Hartman invoices. Supplies I'd assumed went straight to clients. They'd been bleeding my company for years, stockpiling to flip on gray markets once they iced me out. I photographed everything, watermarking images with time and GPS. On a dusty desk, I found a notebook, Jason's handwriting cataloging unit prices, buyer contacts, projected profit after G exit. My initials reduced to a single letter, disposable as packing foam. Rage wanted the wheel, but strategy kept both hands on the camera. Evidence first, vengeance later. Clarice moved the next hearing to emergency civil fraud. Jason tried to claim entrepreneurial side hustle. Victor argued marital privilege. But Hale's chain of custody logs, the GPS trail, and warehouse photos converge like beams in a truss. No weak point left to hammer. The judge, silver-haired and tired of family treachery, quoted Maya Angelou without irony. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Then he froze all Vic J assets, ordered forensic audit of Jason's trucking company, and granted me exclusive control of Wilson and Hartman until the investigation closed. Jessica sat behind the defendant's table, cheeks blotched, mascara trembling. She'd learned of the warehouse that morning. Jason kept secrets even from his co-conspirator. When court recessed, she approached me in the corridor smelling of lilac and regret. "Mama," she began, "I didn't know about the materials, only the divorce strategy." As if that betrayal alone were lighter to carry. I didn't answer. Forgiveness is art that needs curing time. I walked past, heels echoing like nail guns down unfinished hallway. Outside, media waited. Atlanta Tribune, WSB-TV, even a blogger who once praised my affordable housing project. Microphones thrust forward, questions flew. "Mrs. Wilson, how does it feel to uncover your own family's scheme?" I steadied my voice. "It feels like a reminder," I said, "that foundations matter. You cut corners, your building falls. Same with kinship." Headline writers licked their lips. By Thursday, Victor's attorney suggested mediation. We met in a glass conference room 13 floors above Peachtree, skyline glittering like broken promises. Victor wouldn't meet my eyes. Jason looked hunted. Clarice slid our terms across the table. Victor relinquishes claim to the condo, half his share in the business, and pays restitution for siphoned inventory. Jason signs over his warehouse lease and accepts a lifetime ban from any venture involving Wilson and Hartman. In return, I'd drop the criminal pursuit, misdemeanor fines instead of prison stripes. They swallowed hard, but signed. Predators rarely gamble when the prey turns architect. That night, I drove to Macy's dorm with a care package. Her favorite pecan clusters, noise-canceling earbuds for finals, and the truth. She'd heard fragments online but needed the story from me. Tears slid down her cheeks, rage and relief threading together. "Grandma, I kept wondering why Dad suddenly offered to pay my tuition outright. I told her betrayal often wraps itself in generosity. Real love has no paperwork. We hugged until campus bells chimed curfew. Weeks passed. Auditors tallied losses, 6 figures, painful but survivable. I sold one rental property, funneled the money back into the company, and rehired 2 site supervisors Victor had replaced with cheaper labor. Payroll shook my hand like prodigal sons. Spring painted dogwoods outside the courthouse the day final judgment entered the ledger. I kept the house, the pension, the business. Victor kept the Jag, minus lien, and moved into a Buckhead condo he now owned, jointly with his regret. Jason filed for Chapter 13, Jessica filed for therapy. I released Macy from collateral damage and funded her junior year with a single cashier's check, no strings. Tonight I sit on my porch. Late April dusk, warm enough for short sleeves. The wind carries sawdust perfume from a new subdivision my crew is framing 2 streets over. Inside, the kettle hisses. Macy sketches hummingbirds at the patio table. I watch her pencil arc, feather lines sure and deliberate. She calls me to critique shading, and in her eyes I glimpse the future of women who build quiet, precise, unbreakable. I sip chamomile, let the house cradle me, and listen to the hammer rhythm echoing from the job site. Some think revenge is loud. I've learned victory is often a calm evening breeze through a door no one can force open again. The Atlanta summer settled in slow and heavy, pressing magnolia perfume against every porch rail. Wilson and Hartman's construction sites hummed at full tilt, roof trusses clacking, nail guns barking like distant thunder. Yet an unexpected hush draped my personal calendar. Courts were finished, audits wrapped. The crisis that had whirled my life like a cyclone now lay flat as grated soil. Free time is dangerous for hands raised on blueprints. So I walked it off, 4 miles each dawn, then sat at the drafting table I hadn't touched since semi-retirement. Instead of skyscraper schematics, I began sketching a single-story youth workshop. Long, clear-story windows for light, steel beams exposed like honest bones, and a side wing labeled Macy's Studio. Halfway through July, an email pinged from the Atlanta Housing Authority, a defunct community center on Auburn Ave. Was earmarked for demolition, no budget to renovate, but open to partnership proposals if a private entity could foot 80%. I stared at the photos. Buckled roof, ivy strangling brick, a basketball goal missing its rim, yet I saw possibility the way a mason reads an uncut stone. Macy visited that weekend, her sketchbooks thick with hummingbirds and fashion doodles. Over lemonade, we toured the ruin. Pigeons scattered as sunlight sliced through holes in the ceiling, striping dust motes gold. "You think it's savable?" she whispered. I asked what color she'd paint the cinder block studio wall. She chose midnight blue with constellations in silver. Deal struck. I floated the idea to my crew Monday. Pro bono hours in exchange for city salvage credits and their names on a plaque. They signed up before I finished the pitch. Harold Turner ran numbers. Clarice drafted the partnership contract. Even Jessica, now 6 weeks into counseling, offered to help coordinate volunteers. Healing doesn't always shout. Sometimes it shows up in a clipboard and work gloves. By August, the roof was off, revealing sky so blue it made the rusted beams blush. We laid new trusses, poured a polished concrete floor that caught summer light like water. Macy sketched a mural of cranes, construction and bird, rising together. The day we hoisted the final beam, Victor's Jaguar eased onto the curb. He stepped out alone, suit jacket slung like surrender. Workers paused, hammers midair, sweat cooled to tension. I met him halfway, boots grinding gravel. He offered an envelope, half the restitution payment ahead of schedule, and words rehearsed but fragile. "I was wrong and I am sorry." I didn't invite him to stay. Forgiveness could be signed like a delivery receipt and filed for later review. Grand opening landed on the first Saturday of September. Kids from every block spilled through the glass doors, eyes round at 3D printers, paint bays, and a recording booth stitched from reclaimed shipping containers. Macy cut the ribbon with oversized shears, camera shutters ticking like applause. Inside the lobby hung the metal plaque. The Wilson Center for Hands-On Horizons, built by many, founded by one. Toward evening, the crowd thinned to cicada hums. Jessica found me in the workshop, sunlight licking sawdust from her hair. She handed over a tattered manila folder. Childhood drawings I'd thought lost, my pencil corrections still in margins. "You were teaching me even then," she said. Tears blurred my blueprint vision, but I managed to point at the drafting tables where her daughter now coached younger kids on two-point perspective. Outside, the crane mural glowed under floodlights. Victor's silhouette lingered across the street, envelope long delivered, remorse still heavy. I watched him go, not with anger, not with invitation, simply acknowledgement. Some beams you remove, some you shore up, and some you leave upright as a warning. Night cooled. I locked the glass doors, keys warm in my palm, and felt the quiet settle. A peaceful hum keyed to my heartbeat. Home wasn't just the porch anymore. It was this building. These sketches. every young grin under a welding mask. The betrayal that tried to break me had instead mapped out new foundations, ones no court could revoke. I drove back to my porch, chamomile steaming, crickets tuning up. From inside, Macy's laughter drifted down the hall, Jessica adding comments about brushstrokes. I traced the rim of my mug and listened. Victory, indeed, is a calm evening breeze. This time wafting through doors I built wider, stronger, and forever mine. October draped Atlanta in that brief, perfect spell when maple leaves burn ember red and the humidity finally unclenches its fist. At the Wilson Center, autumn smelled of sawdust, printer resin, and cafeteria mac and cheese the kids insisted was artisan because Macy sprinkled paprika on top. Classes had been running only 6 weeks, yet enrollment had doubled. Word travels fast when teenagers get to weld their own bike racks or record rap tracks in a studio lit like a spaceship. I had expected hammers echoing against cinder block. I hadn't expected constant questions. Miss G, how do you price a renovation? Is racism worse on a job site or in an office? Do you ever wish you'd chosen something easier? Each answer braided into the next lesson plan until Tuesdays felt like TED Talks wearing tool belts. The center pulsed from 8 a.m. to 9 at night, and still kids lingered on the steps afterward, trading sketches under streetlights like baseball cards. I kept a thermos of tea by the exit to shepherd stragglers home because I remembered what the city can do to a dream after dark. Yet momentum breeds its own weather. By Halloween, the utility bills landed, higher than any estimate because the recording booth gobbled electricity and the woodworking shop never slept. Grants took months. Pipes demanded payment now. Harold grimaced at spreadsheets. Clarice nudged emails to donors. I swallowed worry and hung a sign near reception. Community build days, all skill levels, donate time or wattage. That Saturday, volunteers packed the parking lot, grandfathers with socket wrenches, aunties with crock pots, a DJ dragging extension cords. Even Jessica arrived, cheeks flushed, a tray of pumpkin muffins balanced like an offering. We resealed windows, insulated ductwork, and swapped every bulb for LEDs until the center glowed efficient as a lighthouse. Around noon, a sleek electric SUV eased in. Out stepped Councilwoman Regina Paxton, press entourage in tow, smile polished to campaign sheen. She praised our mission, snapped photos beside the crane mural, and hinted the city planned a creative corridor grant cycle targeting uplift and legacy neighborhoods. Her eyes lingered on our 3D printers. Technology incubators are voter gold, she whispered. I thanked her, but caution pricked. Politicians court headlines more than communities. I'd learned that during zoning battles decades back. Still, a grant was a grant. Jessica, ever the peacemaker, nudged, Mom, this could cover HVAC. I agreed to submit a proposal. Nothing signed, only possibility penciled. 2 weeks later, Clarice burst into my office waving a folded newspaper. Above the fold, Councilwoman unveils. Paxton Innovation Hub, renovation slated for former firehouse on Auburn Ave. The rendering looked familiar. Too familiar. Same clear story windows, same studio footprint, even the midnight blue wall with silver constellations. Only the plaque bore Paxton's name, not Wilson's. My stomach chilled as though ice water sluiced my spine. Regina Paxton had toured the center not for partnership, but for blueprint theft. Worse, the proposal I'd emailed her office, floor plans, budget notes, was now the foundation of her press release. Clarice's jaw flexed. We can sue for intellectual property infringement, but injunctions are slow. She'll pour concrete before a judge stamps anything. Edward suggested we fight with spectacle instead. If she wants headlines, give her ones that bite back. Macy, listening from the laser cutter station, raised her hand. Grandma, what if we build something she can't copy? Live, public, undeniable? The idea sprouted faster than kudzu. We announced 48-hour Future Forge, an open-air marathon where students and mentors would design, fabricate, and install a solar art canopy over the Saner's courtyard. Live streamed, sponsored by neighborhood eateries, judged by local architects. Regina couldn't claim blueprints if the city watched them being invented in real time. Friday night floodlights bathed the courtyard. Drones buzzed overhead, streaming to social feeds. A countdown clock glowed on the wall. Welding torches flared against October stars. Teen coders fed parametric equations into CNC routers, carving steel ribs that curved like phoenix wings. Jessica managed logistics, her clipboard tapping staccato encouragement. Harold grilled burgers for the night shift. I floated station to station, a conductor guiding sparks instead of strings. By dawn of day 2, fatigue painted everyone pale, but the structure rose. 10 meters of lattice girders wrapped in translucent panels, each etched with a student's fingerprint spiral. Solar film embedded in the panels sipped sunrise and pulsed LEDs in rhythm with heart rate sensors kids clipped to their wrists. At dusk, we flipped the master switch. The canopy blazed copper, indigo, and gold, a living aurora over Auburn Avenue. The crowd erupted. Even local news anchors dropped their practiced tones to shout. Regina Paxton arrived, heels sinking into gravel, entourage scrambling to light her just right. She tried to congratulate us on partnership vision, but cameras already captured the hashtag #FutureForge trending above her head, and every mic pointed not at a politician but at Deontay, a 16-year-old welding savant describing how unused locker mirrors became reflective light baffles. Monday morning, Paxton's office quietly withdrew its Firehouse press release. By Thursday, she proposed a formal partnership. City funds for our utility costs in exchange for quarterly community showcases. Clarice drafted the MOU with clauses so tight not even daylight could sneak through. I signed, pen stroke steady. Utility crises solved, we pivoted to dreams again. Macy's mural class expanded. Jessica started a financial literacy workshop, teaching teens the budgeting lessons she'd learned the hard way. One evening, John stopped by, overseeing delivery of refurbished batteries donated by his logistics company. He lingered afterward, watching kids skitter under the glowing canopy. Funny, he said, how betrayal cleared the foundation for all this. I squeezed his hand. Concrete sets strongest after a good pour, baby. Later that night, I locked the center's glass doors and stepped onto Auburn Avenue. Golden light spilled onto pavement, reflecting off the phoenix canopy like dawn trapped in steel. I remembered the first blueprint lines I'd ever drawn, rough, hopeful, shaky. 40 years later, the lines still flowed, steadier now, but just as hungry for sky. The breeze carried sawdust and jazz from a corner saxophonist. I breathed it in, felt the pulse of an unbreakable legacy rooting deeper with every late bloom, and whispered to the night, keep watching. We're just laying the first course. Winter crept into Atlanta insidiously. No grand snowfall, just a raw, bone-deep chill that seeped through mortar and morale alike. At the Wilson Center, it announced itself one Monday when the main furnace wheezed, rattled, and died 10 minutes before the doors opened. Breath plumed in the studios, condensation fogged the 3D printers. Teens arrived anyway, wrapping themselves in thrift store quilts Macy handed out like library cards. While volunteers scrambled for space heaters, I called the city maintenance hotline listed in our shiny new partnership memo. The clerk's polite voice became brittle when she learned the furnace serviced a privately run facility. Your MOU covers utilities, ma'am, not capital repairs. Submit a requisition. Processing time 12 to 14 weeks. She might as well have asked us to hibernate. I hung up, bracing for resentment in the workshop. Instead, Deontai, the welding savant, unrolled insulation blankets around the CNC router, and Martha's trumpet-playing nephew led students in body percussion rhythms to keep fingers warm. Still, tool motors stalled, paint thickened into sludge. We needed heat before artistry froze. Clarice suggested a short-term loan. Harold tut-tutted. Interest rates were climbing. Jessica spoke up timidly. What if we act like a construction site, rent a portable boiler and tie it into the ducts? Edward raised an eyebrow. Costly, but feasible if we sourced reclaimed parts. The idea bloomed from Jesse's frustration into a 72-hour sprint the kids christened Operation Hearth. John's logistics company donated an unused diesel generator. Deontay and two HVAC mentors scavenged heat exchangers from a condemned motel. I negotiated a weekend rental of flexible duct hose. The biggest problem was cash. Even scrounged components needed fuel and fittings. Macy designed limited edition hoodies featuring the Phoenix canopy breathing fire. Within 12 hours, the online store crashed under orders. By Friday evening, funds cleared, equipment delivered, and students queued to learn why a backflow preventer mattered as much as a paintbrush. Saturday dawned steel gray. Snowflakes, rare in Atlanta, ghosted past floodlights as we fired the makeshift boiler. Warm air guttered into vents like the first exhale after sprinting uphill. When interior thermostats crept above 50, kids cheered. Edward filmed it all for grant documentation. I felt the same quiet pride as the day my first spec house passed inspection. Trouble knocked anyway. Always does, wearing a different coat. OSHA auditors, alerted by social media chatter, arrived Monday to inspect unapproved mechanical assemblies. They found the rented boiler, a patchwork of goodwill and desperation, tied into ductwork with hose clamps and fervent prayers. Citations loomed. Clarice negotiated a 48-hour grace period. Prove compliance plans, avoid fines. That night, as the Phoenix canopy pulsed blue over empty benches, I weighed options. Rip out the rig and freeze again, or fast-track a permanent furnace. Jessica reminded me city funds covered utilities, not equipment, but unused grant money from Paxton's office sat in escrow for community innovation. A furnace that recycled exhaust heat qualified as innovation if we dressed it in the right language. Clarice drafted an addendum. Harold massaged numbers. John built a PowerPoint with animated flames flickering into eco-friendly icons. We presented to Paxton's committee via Zoom the next day. Council approval required a tie-breaking vote. It came from a freshman member whose grandmother attended our watercolor class. The furnace grant sailed through at 4:58 p.m., 18 minutes before OSHA's deadline. Inspectors returned, measured clearances, nodded. Heat flowed legally at last. Warmth no citation could endanger. With crisis solved, momentum surged again. The veteran boiler saga hit local news. Teens engineer heat heroics. Donations climbed, not in five-figure leaps, but in steady $20 drips from retired teachers and rideshare drivers. Each note read the same. Keep the lights on, keep the sparks flying. On the winter solstice, we hosted an open house potluck. Martha's nephew played Ain't No Mountain High Enough, while kids led parents through studios smelling of cedar shavings and resin. Near the mural wall, Jessica guided guests to a new display. Storyboard panels of the center's journey, betrayal, courtroom victories, phoenix canopy, boiler triumph, rendered comic style by Macy and her art squad. Speech bubbles above my cartoon likeness read, "Foundations Matter." The crowd laughed. I pretended to scold Macy for my exaggerated hard hat hair, but pride swelled so fierce my chest ached. Later, after dishes were washed and volunteers drifted home, I lingered alone beneath the canopy. Snow dusted its solar film, refracting courtyard lights into a hush of prismatic stars. Betrayal had tried to chill me. City red tape tried again, but both times the response was the same. Build, weld, paint, persist. I pressed a mittened hand to the steel rib, warm from circulating LEDs, and thanked whatever cosmic architect kept granting me blueprints for resilience. When I returned to the porch that night, the furnace's hum followed me like contented purring. Jessica sat at the dining table, drafting next month's budget, Macy beside her designing scholarship flyers. John napped on the couch, laptop balanced on his stomach, spreadsheets of grant metrics glowing faintly. Family. Fractured, tested, assembled again. Not because betrayal vanished, but because we learned to bolt our beams tighter. I brewed chamomile, passed mugs around, and finally allowed myself to sink into the silence that builds only when the day's hammering is done. Outside, snow kept falling, soft, inexorable, blanketing the city that had both scarred and crowned me, and I thought, let the flakes come. I know how to raise roofs strong enough for any weight. January thaw rarely lasts in Georgia, but for a week the city felt forgiven. Ice melting off gutters, kids peeling coats on playgrounds, traffic radios bragging, 62 and sunny. At the Wilson Center, the furnace hummed contentedly, but the heat we generated in the community was hotter still. Our social feeds overflowed with inquiries from churches, public schools, even a juvenile detention counselor, asking if the Phoenix Canopy's fingerprint panels could travel to his rec yard. Momentum, it seemed, wanted another gear. The ask that surprised me came from Spelman College's president, Dr. Celeste Monroe. She requested lunch. We met at a little bistro where waiters hover like well-bred ghosts. Dr. Monroe went straight to business. Spelman and Georgia Tech were co-launching an interdisciplinary makerspace and wanted the Wilson Center named as a living lab partner. It meant research funding, graduate mentors, and, most tempting, a rolling grant for thermal and electric upgrades that would retire our from patched-together boiler saga forever. My first instinct, burned by Paxton, was caution. Will my kids become paper statistics for somebody's dissertation? I asked. Dr. Monroe smiled. Not if the dissertation belongs to them. Dual credit courses, college portfolios, paid internships. We want their names on patents, not footnotes. The offer rang real. I told her I'd bring it to the student council, a rowdy Wednesday night assembly of teenagers who run the centers day to day. Convince them, I said, and you've convinced me. That evening, our multi-purpose room felt like City Hall. Deontay chairing, Macy projecting slides, Jessica taking minutes. After Dr. Monroe's presentation, debate sparked. Some feared corporate dilution, others dreamed of free laser cutters. They voted 21-4 in favor, but only after an amendment that any research derived from the center must pay royalties back into a trust for future student ventures. Dr. Monroe signed the addendum on the spot. I watched pride flare across faces that once assumed contracts were weapons, not tools. Money arrived faster than warm weather. The first grant tranche funded insulation foam so thick we joked a tornado could bounce off our walls. A truckload of donated solar glass skylights followed. Campers from last summer's Future Forge program returned. now weekend apprentices, to help Edward and John retrofit the roof. By the time February freeze returned, daylight poured inside like liquid gold, and the meter spun backwards as the building fed surplus watts to the grid. Of course, a rising profile attracts more than allies. I learned that lesson all over again when Atlanta Tomorrow, a glossy lifestyle magazine, requested a feature from betrayed widow to builder of hope. Their crew arrived with ring lights and pointed questions. Did the Wilson Center exist mainly to spite my ex-husband? Had Victor tried to reconcile? I parried, steering the interview towards student achievements, but the reporter's smile sharpened. A week later, the article dropped. The headline, "Reclaiming Her Kingdom." Subheads dripped with tabloid spice. Victor's name peppered every paragraph. The fallout came fast. Victor's lawyer emailed Clarice a cease and desist claiming defamation. TV pundits debated whether my vindictiveness overshadowed philanthropy. Some donors panicked. Jessica burst into my office, magazine in hand, eyes blazing. "They turned you into a soap opera villain," she hissed. I skimmed the article, half-truths strung like flashing bulbs, but felt no quake in my bones. I'd survived sharper nails than headlines. Clarice filed a rebuttal op-ed and threatened countersuits. Edward organized a facts over flash open house where students demonstrated projects instead of speeches. Deontay welded a steel sign for our gate, "We build, we don't gossip." The community responded. Attendance tripled that Saturday. Donations boomeranged. Even Martha's octogenarian jazz trio live-streamed rehearsal under the canopy captioned, "Come see real stories." By Monday, the magazine moved on to a new scandal. Still, the episode forced me to confront a truth. Victor's shadow lingered because I'd never faced him outside court documents. So when I learned he'd been hospitalized for minor heart surgery, I asked Jessica to drive me. She stiffened. "You owe him nothing." Maybe. But closure is a door you build yourself. Hospital corridors smell identical no matter the decade. Bleach, plastic, faint despair. Victor lay propped on pillows, gray overtaking the confident silver of his hair. For a heartbeat, I saw the young carpenter I'd hired all those years ago, the man who once spent Saturdays teaching Macy to whistle through a soda straw. Then the memory of forged signatures returned, sharp enough to draw breath. He opened his eyes. Shock flickered, then wariness. I spoke first. "You nearly killed the only thing we built that mattered, trust. I came to tell you I'm finished carrying the rubble." His lips parted, but words clogged. I continued, "Rest, heal. I wish you peace, but you have no claim on my story going forward." With that, I placed on his bedside table a miniature canvas, a sunflower against midnight blue. "Late blooms," I said, "don't need old sunlight." I left before tears, his or mine, could complicate goodbye. Spring rehearsal soon followed, winter melting into gutters. Spelman Tech fellows arrived, teaching coding in Python and architecture and cardboard models. Macy won a state youth arts grant to expand her Constellation wall. Jessica's financial literacy series attracted local bankers offering microloans. John's data dashboards impressed a civic innovation panel enough to secure another year of operating funds. Each victory felt like a rivet driven deep, strengthening beams. One April evening, as dogwoods blushed along Auburn Ave, we hosted a gala to mark the center's first anniversary. Kids wore tool belt bow ties. Volunteers strung fairy lights from the solar canopy. The jazz trio riffed on "Lift Every Voice and Sing." I delivered brief remarks. "Thank you for proving that betrayal can become blueprint, and blueprints can become bridges. We ain't finished." Cheers shook dust from rafters that hadn't held dust in months. Later, alone under the phoenix glow, I opened my sketchbook to plan Phase 2, a mobile makerspace bus that could roll into rural counties like color on wheels. I traced the first line, steady, hungry, sure, then wrote beneath it, when foundations are solid, the sky stops being a limit and starts being a workshop. I closed the book, listening to hammers echo faintly from tomorrow. May dawns on Auburn Avenue smelling of honeysuckle and fresh asphalt, and our loading dock looks like a swap meet for miracles. Surplus tablet computers from Georgia Tech, salvaged battery packs courtesy of John's Logistics Network, and a retired MARTA shuttle whose vinyl seats still remember commuters' gossip. By noon, Deontay's crew has stripped the bus down to ribs, making room for fold-down workbenches, filament lockers, and a tiny galley Macy insists will double as a paint-mixing bar. We christen the project Rome, Rolling Opportunities and Art Mobile. Jessica drafts the budget on a whiteboard bigger than her old living room TV, and every line item ends with a student's name: laser cutter blades, Shauna's engraving hustle, portable kiln, Terrence's ceramics club. I watch them chart costs the way I once framed joists, measure twice, cut skepticism. While sparks fly from angle grinders, Dr. Celeste Monroe calls from Spelman. The college has earmarked fellowship stipends for 2 Rome interns if we agree to collect data on rural access gaps. Clarice cautions, protect the kids' privacy, but Macy smirks, we'll anonymize like pros. A handshake over Zoom seals it. July 4th becomes our soft launch target, fireworks and steam demos at a county fair 2 hours south where the poultry plant closed and evening options are a gas station lot or church bingo. Flyers go out. The local librarian messages, we've got a waiting list already. Kids want to code light shows. Momentum is a river now. All we do is keep the channel clear. 3 days before departure, the first pothole appears. Bureaucratic, of course. A safety inspector from the Department of Public Transportation arrives unannounced, citing tip load concerns for the rooftop solar array. He eyes the bus like it's a teenage joyride, not a classroom on wheels. Deontay produces torque specs. John flashes CAD models, but the man shakes his head. Needs certified structural sign-off, otherwise you're grounded. Deadline, 48 hours. For one hot, exhausted minute, I feel the old betrayal gnaw, a flash of Victor arguing permits aren't real work. Then Edward nudges my elbow. Call Cheryl, he whispers. Cheryl Brown, my first engineer back in the 90s, the woman who taught me stress load math between coffee refills. We haven't spoken in 5 years, but she answers on the first ring. Laughs when I ask a favor and drives down at dawn with her PE stamp running calculations on the hood of her Prius. By lunchtime, the inspector signs off, muttering something about, should have known Wilson always comes armed with code books. Launch day rises blister bright. We caravan south, Rome gliding silent on fresh battery packs. Jessica's SUV hauling tool crates, and a volunteer minivan full of saxophones, Martha's idea. Every build site deserves a soundtrack. At the fairgrounds, kids spill from pickup trucks before engines cut, eyes wide at the bus's Phoenix decal, breathing digital flames across its panels. Workshops unfurl like magic tricks. Shauna teaches engraving on recycled aluminum discs. Terrence demos raku firing in a portable kiln. Macy guides younger cousins painting constellations on the bus's drop-down awning. Even the county commissioner forgets ribbon-cutting speeches long enough to solder his initials into an LED badge. Mid-afternoon, a wiry 12-year-old named Eli hovers at the 3D printer but won't touch the keyboard. I kneel, ask what he'd build if fear weren't shouting. A better chicken plucker, he whispers. Family still keeps backyard hens after the plant closed. Within an hour, he and a Spellman fellow model a gear wheel with rubber flanges printed in neon green. When it spins true on a borrowed drill, Eli's grin could power the state grid. I slip the prototype into a padded pouch, label it Patent Number 1, Eli Johnson. Fireworks crackle overhead that night, mirrored in the bus's solar glass. Kids lounge on hay bales, munching kettle corn, their faces splash-lit by RGB lights they coded themselves. Jessica leans beside me, murmurs, "Remember when betrayal was the loudest thing we heard?" I nod toward the laughter. It's background noise now, like cicadas. Back in Atlanta a week later, we tally impact metrics, 127 participants, 14 prototypes, and one county superintendent requesting Rome as a quarterly fixture. Harold grins over spreadsheets, Clarice drafts rider clauses, but I keep thinking of Eli and his neon gear, how a late bloom's real work is seeding the next harvest. At dusk, I climb onto the bus roof, skyline flickering violet. The solar panels hum, storing sun for tomorrow's miles. I open my sketchbook, still smelling of honeysuckle and solder, and draw a dotted line arcing beyond Georgia's border. Above it, I write, "Blueprints travel fastest on wheels, below smaller. Next stop, wherever courage has a vacancy." And under stadium lights from a distant baseball game, I close the book, certain the road will widen the moment we start the engine again. 2 weeks after the county fair triumph, Rome's tires kissed Alabama asphalt for the first time. We crossed the Chattahoochee at dawn, pink mist lifting off the water like a curtain rise, and the bus's battery gauge blinked a bright, confident green. Destination: Iron Bend, population 2,900, a one-time steel mill boomtown, now better known for "Leave Fighting Dogs at Home" signs outside the shuttered Winn-Dixie. The invitation had come from Ms. Luella Pierce, an octogenarian librarian who ran the town's one-room branch and still stamped checkout cards by hand. Her email read, "Our kids need a reason to imagine staying." That line hooked me harder than any grant pitch. We parked beside the brick library, Phoenix logo shimmering under July glare. Some folks waved from porch swings, others stared, arms folded. The sheriff's cruiser idled across the street the way crows linger near roadkill. When we rolled out the awning, a man in camouflage ball cap muttered, "City folks bring trouble." I smiled, the kind you give a bent nail before straightening it. Macy kicked off with "Spray paint your skyline," kids mapping hopes onto plywood silhouettes of Iron Bend. Deontay fired the plasma cutter, sparks flying like 4th of July litters. Slowly, curiosity won. First came teenagers, then curious parents. Last, a handful of gray-haired steelworkers in union caps drawn by the scent of cedar and possibility. Third hour in, a pickup roared past. Passenger hurling a slur that sliced air sharper than Deontay's cutter. Paint cans clattered. For a heartbeat, energy froze. Eyes swung to me. I inhaled the way I used to at board meetings when a contractor called me sweetheart. Then I stepped onto the makeshift stage of plywood and flame retardant and said, voice steady, "Hate is a pre-existing structure. We tear it down the same as rot together, piece by piece." Martha's nephew lifted his horn and blew a blues riff so mournful even the sheriff lowered his coffee. The kids resumed painting, angrier, brighter. A union man named Earl grabbed a roller, slapped orange over a profanity on plywood. The spell broke. Momentum reclaimed. We planned to stay one day. We stayed 3. Earl produced crates of scrap rebar from an abandoned plant warehouse. Under Deontay's lead, teens welded it into a 12-foot archway. Macy stenciled constellations along its curve, each star labeled with a student's name and future profession: chef, game dev, nurse, pilot. They bolted the arch above the library door just as Ms. Luella clicked off the porch light. Tears trembled on her lashes. "Now children walk through their futures to borrow books," she whispered. Local hardware store donated LED strip lights. Jessica ran wiring. John coded a motion sensor so the arch glowed whenever someone crossed beneath. On our last night, the sheriff approached, hat in hand. "Town fair's next month," he said gruffly. "Wouldn't mind you rolling back through." A detente signed in neon. Rome headed east at sunrise, bus quiet except for cooling fans. I sat up front, sketchbook on my knees, replaying the slur, the welder's sparks, Miss Luella's trembling smile. Betrayal had taught me how to reinforce beams. Iron Bend taught me how to stand still until strangers decided to pick up the hammer beside me. Edward glanced over the dashboard. Town changed, or we just uncovered what was hiding? Both, I said. You can't plant sunflowers in concrete, but crack it once and roots will find the seam. At a rest stop overlooking Pines, we taped a fresh magnet canvas to the picnic area map, the archway, aglow under stars. Macy dabbed a final brushstroke and added a note. From Iron Bend with grit. We left it there for the next traveler craving proof that late blooms grow even in rusted soil. The bus pulled onto the highway, horizon unfolding like blank drafting paper. I wrote in my journal, hate tried its best renovation, one of fear. We answered with steel, color, and the permission to dream. Next town, same blueprint. Crack the concrete, shine the seeds, roll on. And as Rome's silent engine steadied into night miles, I felt the old ache of betrayal fade another inch, replaced by something wilder and wider, an understanding that the house I'm building now stretches far beyond my porch, framed by every archway and canvas we leave humming in our wake. The first cool breath of October rolls over Atlanta, brushing sweet gum leaves into burgundy and gold and signaling 1 year since the Wilson Center unlocked its doors. It is also the day Rome glides home from its longest circuit yet, 1,800 whispered battery miles across 5 southern states, 53 workshops, and 1 brand new U.S. patent application bearing a 12-year-old's name. The bus eases into the courtyard at dusk, Phoenix decal dulled by road dust, but LEDs still pulsing like a steady heartbeat under the solar film. A cheer ripples through the gathered crowd, students, parents, retirees, union welders from Iron Bend, Miss Luella and Earl, even the once skeptical sheriff making the drive to see what became of that arch. Inside the center, banners hang between steel beams. Late Bloom's Harvest Festival. Tables overflow with projects that would have felt like science fiction a year ago. Circuit board birdhouses chirping real-time air quality data, 3D printed prosthetic grippers for toddlers, and front and center, Eli's neon green chicken plucker gear mounted on a prototype that clucks softly when switched on. He stands beside it, pocketed hands betraying nervous pride. When the spotlight lands, he tilts his chin toward the archway out front. That, he tells a TV reporter, is where dreams clock in for work. Macy and her art crew debut the final constellation on the midnight wall, a cluster named Gloria, each star tagged with a trait she's watched me wield: resolve, blueprint, mercy, fire. I laugh, scold her for giving my wrinkles their own nebula, then wipe a tear before it hits blueprints on the clipboard. Dr. Celeste Monroe and a Georgia Tech dean present 2 framed certificates, the first cohort of dual credit graduates. 16 students, once strangers to CAD software, now hold both high school diplomas and freshman engineering credits. Deontay, in a tie slicker than engine oil, recounts how his welding scholarship came with a research stipend, studying stress tolerances in mobile labs like Rome. College called me a non-traditional student, he grins. Guess tradition needed an upgrade. Music floats from the jazz trio warming up beneath the solar canopy. Martha's nephew segues into Stevie Wonder's Sir Duke because rhythm still makes the scaffolding tap its toes. Jessica circulates with ledger sheets and cider, reporting that utility bills have been net zero 3 months straight. Harold beams. Clarice, wearing a rare sparkly scarf, whispers that Paxton's office has just renewed funding. No drama attached this time, only thanks. I slip outside to the porch swing I rebuilt after Victor's departure, each cedar plank planed smoother than apology. Breath fogs in the early chill, the center's windows spill honey-colored light across the sidewalk. Footsteps approach. John carrying 2 mugs of chamomile, steam twisting into the violet air. Mom, he says, sitting, remember when you told me movement is direction, not distance? He nods toward the center. I think I finally get it. The bus rolls out, comes back, but the real traveling happens in there. He taps his temple, then his heart. We clink mugs. A hush settles. Atlanta traffic muted by distance. Cicadas long gone for the season. In that quiet I hear echoes. Derek's steady hammer. Catherine's lavender thread snapping through cloth. Lucy's cinnamon laughter in a distant kitchen. Betrayal's clang has dulled to a forgotten tool at the bottom of a box. What rings clear now are the new sounds we've forged. Arc weld crackles, young whistles in code syntax, the soft whir of batteries feeding light. Behind us, the crowd counts down toward a surprise Macy orchestrated. At 0, the Phoenix canopy blooms electric gold and fireworks, silent drone-flown sparklers, paint constellations above the roofline. Gasps rise. Earl's union cap lifts as he tilts his head to trace the glowing arcs. Someone urges me forward for a speech. I step beneath the arch, glance up at fingerprints shining against night, and realize every word I could say is already welded, printed, coded, or sung around me. So I simply raise my hands, palms dusty from a day's build, and let the light reflect. The roar of applause folds into one collective exhale, proof that a community, once fractured by deceit, can clap in a single rhythm. When the noise fades, students race to the bus, chalking the next route on its side panel. Carolinas, Tennessee, Mississippi Delta. The skyline behind them glitters, cranes marking new construction sites, competitors perhaps, but also reminders of the city I helped shape. I turn to Jessica, Macy, John. Ready to draft Phase 3? 3 nods answer, sure as sunrise framed by steel. I look south where highway lights braid into darkness. Somewhere beyond, a town waits, its concrete cracked, its seeds thirsty for sun. Rome's battery is charged, the road adhesive, my resolve older than asphalt but still fresh as primer. Heart steady, blueprint clear, I whisper the only command this journey has ever needed. Drive on.